Hi, Steve Stahlberg here with monthly painting video number 72, made in Kuala Lumpur, December 2019. Right now is actually January 1, but here we go. This month is back to my original character. Haven't named her yet, but she's that diesel punk witch riding a hoverbike she named Broomy with her cat familiar. I previously painted her in the back from her bike from the front and then from the side. Now I want to paint this from the back, flying through the air. And here are some references. This is about thrust vectoring. You can see the jet exhaust here being bent or rotated by these actuators here, which you won't see in my final. And obviously this one also is covered by steel plates when it's finished, but you'll see what I mean later. Some more references, details of flying vehicles, like this one here, this little actuator who pushes that little rudder, and there's another one here. I made them a bit bigger on mine, you'll see later. Some more references, and let's start the video. So I start sketching on a separate layer as usual. Here you see I first started with a vertical exhaust, which was just silly. It didn't do anything for me. I don't think it would have done much for anybody else either to see a weird exhaust like that, a weird nozzle. Now there is an aerospike engine design, sorry, that looks kind of a little bit like that. You can Google it if you want to. Aerospike, A-E-R-O spike, S-P-I-K-E, a technology that allows climbing to extreme altitudes without changing a nozzle. Like for instance, you know, they shoot the rocket to the moon, they have to have like 3 stages just to get out of the Earth's atmosphere due to different atmospheric pressures on different levels. The aerospike engine, you don't have to do that. You can go all the way with one single engine. But I mean, she's not going to the moon, so I just went for a normal, you know, jet plane exhaust, like a fighter jet or something. At first I didn't have that thrust vectoring, which you'll see later. Here I'm struggling with the perspective. It's quite off, as you can see right now. Some more references I used, especially the Indian there, the Indian motorcycle. That's one of my personal favorites. I almost had one like that. I had a bike that I customized to look close to it, but it wasn't a real Indian, and now I can't afford them. So the best I can do is draw bikes that I like to look at. Okay, so perspective problems here, moving stuff around. And see, this is quite easy when you worked on a transparent layer. You just grab whatever you want to grab and just move it. You know, like here I'm moving the whole thing. Perspective, warping. And I don't work on a white background. It's I don't know. It's too strong. The white is too strong. The contrast is too strong. So I try to usually work on some kind of colored intermediate tone background like this. The color in this case, I don't know why I chose brown. I guess that's the basic color of her. If you merge her skin with the shadows and yeah, I could have used blue because that's going to be the main color in this image. Parts of the bike itself are blue. Her jacket is blue. The sky was going to be blue, but then here you see help lines. I'm putting the help lines on. I'm just estimating them by eye. But it's fairly easy to do. If you start on the wider end, and you start at the edges, like left and right here, and then you do the middle one. You estimate the center point here between those left and right, and then you estimate the center point here between those two left and right, and then again you subdivide it in half. So that's why you see 4 here. The extreme left, extreme right, 1 in the middle, and then 2 more here and here. You know, that's just a quick way to. It could be quicker to do it with Photoshop's own grid, but that grid turns out very fine, and to me it's a bit obstructing. It obstructs my view a little bit, so I like to just work with the fewer lines like this. And anyway, it's quick to do. Ellipses are very important to me. I mean, I don't like to wing them, you know, do them manually, just looking at it. It's so much quicker and easier and more precise and wonderfully exact to use Photoshop's circle or selection tool to do that. And still having problems with the you see I'm starting the second drawing layer here. There's going to be 3. This is like the intermediate stage of the line drawing. The line drawing is extremely important if you're going to have a cartoony look with lines. Of course, it's like the most important part of the whole thing. That's why this takes quite a while. It's taking quite a while, and I'm putting a lot of effort into the drawing. Moving it around here. The bike is actually more difficult than the anatomy for me at this stage. The figure, the character, the anatomy of the human anatomy. And you also, in this case, you really have to start with the bike, because she's going to be standing on it with her foot and holding it with her hand, and her ass needs to be right centered above ergonomically where it would be in real life, where if she would sit down. She's not going to sit down. I'm going to have her standing up, like in that reference, but you know what I mean. Her pose needs to follow the bike, basically, is what I'm saying. So then the bike becomes even more important to get it right. You see, this ellipse here is much fatter than this one back here, and that's obviously due to perspective. There's no formula to how to do that, unless you use 3D CG. Then you can get perfect. You can get this line drawing perfect if you just model these chunky, blocky. You make a block out basically with, you know, the exhaust here and the front here and the tank. The tank is really tricky because it has this smooth egg-shaped organic design, and the saddle is also really tricky because it doesn't conform to any like cube or any simple shape like cylinder or cone or anything like that. It's a very complex shape the saddle is, and the saddlebags are also a bit organic in shape. They're not exactly cubes or rectangles either. So yeah, this bike was really tricky. So here I jumped a bit. I finished the intermediate drawing, and now I'm drawing the anatomy here, switching the help layer on and off every now and then just to help with her. The perspective on her shoulders, you know, her shoulders now should follow obviously the perspective of the steering handles here, because she's holding on to them, and it's not turned in any direction. It's just flat straight on. And then, you know, when her shoulders are straight and her hips are straight in bike terms, I mean, her hips are following the bike in perspective. Her shoulders should be following the bike in perspective. She's turning a little bit, so that's a small complication right there. She's turning her head, which may turn her shoulder just a tiny little bit, but they're still fairly squared off straight. Now, I'm not really happy with her pose here, so I'm also fiddling with that. Her top became too small and her bottom too big. But I do want to have a little bit of perspective there. I want her foot to be closer to the camera, so bigger in perspective than her head, you know, which is her head and her skull would be the furthest point away from the camera in this scene that we can see. And I'm adding some shadows just to help. Just helps me see. I didn't keep those shadows in the end because I'm gonna trace over this whole thing, you know, one more time completely. I changed the legs a bit, so here I'm erasing the old leg. I made a new leg and erasing the old one here, just to keep the underdrawing clear when I'm gonna trace over it in a minute. And also I was also, you know, constantly looking at my old bike, the previous version of this bike that I drew, to get all these details right. In the beginning of the process, you may have noticed there were floorboards here. I took the floorboards away and gave her a peg to stand on instead. And she's dressed just like she is in the previous illustration. She has the same tattoo, the same logo on her jacket, and so on. And I did some quick sketching of the lighting, and now I'm having to readjust the lighting because I changed the leg, so I'm having to move the shadows into a new position here to fit the new leg. It is very rough, but this is, you know, I'm gonna follow this. I'm gonna clean this up later. As I said, the most important part here is the line drawing, and that's coming up next. I'm gonna trace over this very carefully with a lazy Nezumi, the lazy mouse switched on to maximum smoothness, and sort of try to do several light feathery strokes. Some people say you should be bold and do one single stroke. Sometimes I do that, but with this technique and with my old Wacom, which seems to be wobbly, you know, it seems to introduce like a, a shakiness in the pen, even though I'm not shaking my hand, but I think it's it's some kind of pixelation inside the old Wacom that is giving this tremble of the point. And here I'm just quickly filling in the color. So sometimes you'll see me do several strokes, like 1, 2, 3, like at 50% pressure or something, which together, you know, each one is wobbly, but they're all wobbly in different ways, so that when they come together they look smoother. You know what I mean? That's you'll see me do that. And then sometimes I'll try a longer stroke and a more forceful one, and sometimes it works with the Wacom, sometimes it doesn't. You know, it's if I do it fast enough, it seems that helps. But you know, you guys probably don't have that problem. But this is an old Wacom I'm using, and it's speeded up now. But you will. I'll tell you that this is very slow. This process is very slow that I'm doing here. So I'm taking my time, trying to make them nice and perfect and decisive looking, even though sometimes I don't make them in a decisive way, but I try to make them look decisive, if you know what I mean. The lazy Nezumi, the lazy mouse thing, really helps with that. If you look at this long stroke here, for instance, that's you know, that could easily have been very undecisive and wobbly if I didn't have that switched on, and if I did a slow stroke. And you'll see me doing one stroke undo, one stroke undo. You know, that's a nice quick way. I mean, it seems like it would take longer, but it's quick. You know, you just do those. You just keep your finger on the Control Z and you just do zip, 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 done, until you get the perfect stroke you want. Yeah, the coloring after this is not as brain intensive, I should say, focus intensive. You don't need to focus too much when you're, because now you see you have the sketches there, the basic colors are there. After this, after I get the line drawing done, all I have to do is paint within the edges. I have to just make sure that all the edges are clean, and that's it. You know, that's easy. You can watch Netflix while you're doing that. You know, it's fun. You just erase what is outside the lines and fill in whatever is missed inside the lines. You know, it's like when I was a kid and doing the painting by numbers thing. You know. And the reason everything looks pale is because I added a layer of white, which is pulled down to like 60%, just to make it more easy, so I can see my new lines much better than the old lines. You know, that's the only reason that I did that. It also reminds me of the way I used to trace things in physical real life way back. You put a piece of white paper, semi-transparent white paper on top of your sketch and trace like this. you can see how tedious all of this is. I'm not going to show all of it, but you can see the principle, you know, and on the legs it becomes even more important that you stay smooth and clean, you know, and decisive. Not so much on a small furry animal like this here. You see you can have several strokes, because that indicates fur, you know, in this case, that you can have some indecisiveness, or some, like my old art teacher used to say, tissy tissy. You can go scratch 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 instead of one single stroke, you know. That might actually help. Like here you see that's fur, that indicates fur on the tail, and you know, here these few lines right here, you know, and on the ear, you know, that's and this is supposed to be the dew claws here. I don't know if that's beautiful cat. I do have a cat, but you know, they'll never sit still for this kind of treatment. To I would not even attempt to do that. And then sometimes you can thicken the lines to indicate that there is space, that there is shadow, you know, ambient occlusion type shadow. You can hint at it in some places like this, and a little bit here, you know. Sometimes I can't help myself. And you can see how they're wobbly too. Those lines are more obviously wobbly, so I try not to do those too much. And here I'm grabbing the tank from the old image, the previous image, and I'm just going to use it as an under sketch to more quickly be able to get everything in the right location. Now you can see here the lettering Broomy is not bending according to perspective along the tank as it should be. The tank is bulging outwards a little bit here, so Broomy should also bulge outwards, but you'll see me sort of adjusting for that later. As I'm doing the selection, you'll see me adjusting for it during the selection process. Here I'm selecting the flames, and I'm just going to add a border, a thick border to that, which is easy to do. Yeah, right there, yeah. And so there, that's it. That's all you need for that, and they're going to be not at full intensity anyway, so they're going to be toned down a bit. And here you can see I'm bending the B, I'm bending the R. I'm trying to bend all the letters a little bit to the left there, like that. And then I had to move that. That was a perspective issue as well, moving the B and the R closer together. And here's the finished drawing. As you can see, I'm now basically in polish mode. I am making sure that all the colors are staying within the lines. And you can see I simply grabbed the sketchy color drawing and blurred it, you know, and made a selection inside the line for her. They're on different layers, by the way. The girl, the cat, the bike, they're all on separate layers, which makes it easier. And even the shoes, the clogs, or the geta, as the Japanese geta wooden shoes things that she has, are on separate layer. And so, and this graphic is from my previous PSD file, which if you've been with me all this time, you have that file also. You can go in there and have a look. And fitting it to her arm, fitting it to perspective. Yeah, and just erasing anything of the painting that falls outside the line, and just filling in anything. Usually I use the smudge tool. Just switch on the you know, I just lock the layer so that nothing can end up outside outside of what has already been painted. So and then I just drag the smudge tool from the center of the area to the edge, to the border, in whatever way is needed to make it sort of smoothly fill out to the edge. Now this is a little bit more tricky here, because this is not separate selection, so you know, all these things I just have to manually sort of paint inside and outside the lines, and it's also very easy, you know, because you can see, like, I mean, it's obvious. you see a blurry area, you just grab paint from one side and pull it to the border, and then you grab paint from the other side and pull it to the same border from the other side, you know. Like here, I just selected that area and filled it with red, you know. Now it's a very easy process, easy and straightforward, and I find it quite relaxing and nice to do this. This is fun. It's just a matter of time, just a matter of crafting it slowly, like in simple ways, like building Lego. I don't know. And the sketchy shading that I had, I colored it real quick, like just I used colorize on in some ways. Here you can see some of the sketchy drawing that is still there in a blurry manner. This will be cleaned up, and actually this area will be changed in a moment. Like I mentioned, the thrust vectoring thing. I'm gonna add that. This lid was up here at first. You'll see if you go back and look at the beginning, you'll see that the lid for the leather bags wasn't good enough. It was a bit weird, unrealistic. The lids actually go down lower to protect from rain and stuff, and there was a gap here. I had a gap at the top, but there can't be any gap there because that would let the rain in, you know, the weather. This is more like what they look like in real life. And here you see the actuator I was talking about in the beginning that pushes the rudder. It's a bit too big for the size, but I wanted it to have a meaty look and to be obvious so people could see it. Here you can see more clearly what I'm doing when I'm talking about just cleaning up the edges of everything. Cleaning up and fixing the lighting a little bit. And this tail light is going to have to move up as well. I did that too later. You'll see that. But here I'm just working on the shading. And I place some colors, plop, 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 fairly quickly, and then I go in with the smudge tool and work on them like a bit like oil paint in some cases. And now I'm working on the background. I actually didn't use this in the end, but this is one way that you can do background. You can use photo bashing, and in this case it didn't work out, or I just decided to paint a whole new background, which you'll see. You can see it here vaguely. It's already been changed, but you'll see later when I pull out. And here's the thrust vectoring thing. This is like a ball joint here, and this thing right now is aiming upwards a little bit, which, you know, pushes her bike, which pushes this part down, but her front pushes up. So that's how it works. It's like a rocket. Whichever way you aim the rocket, you go in the opposite direction. So this is the finished one. It's done, and let me just point out a few things. You see I moved the taillight up here. It was down here before, but of course that would have interfered with the thrust vectoring. And see, let's see, anything else? No, I think that's it. You can see I cleaned up the logo a bit. This is also from the previous illustration. Yeah, Broomy. Thanks for your support, and see you next month.